Welcome to ENside Politics, our weekly podcast on everything you need to know about San Antonio politics. I'm Greg Jefferson, Metro Editor of the San Antonio Express News, and I'm joined today by a special guest, Daiana Lambrecht, Executive Director of Futuro San Antonio. Welcome.
Yes.
This is a relatively new, your organization, relatively new, basically champion for public education in San Antonio.
That's correct.
Super challenging time for anybody involved in public education with the kind of unwinding of the U.S. Department of Education, going through the Texas legislature. You've got the school voucher program, number of issues. But let's start with your organization. Let's get into the history. How did it start?
Yes, so I am the executive director and founder. So you could say by me and founding board. We actually started off 2023, in the summer of 2023, with a lot of listening sessions. I spent that entire summer doing a lot of one-on-ones with community members, families, educators, really trying to understand what was missing from the space and what could be our impact that we could have as an organization. Yeah. And, you know, a lot of the stories that I heard was that feelings of frustration of families and students not being at the table when it came to decision-making on education. I actually have a long history of community organizing background.
Yeah. Where do you come from?
Yeah. So I'm from Argentina, born and raised. My mom was a teacher, grandma, teacher and principal. So needless to say, education was a core value in my household. We immigrated to Florida when I was 11 years old. And we spent about 10 years undocumented in this country. And that really shaped my understanding as a young person, particularly the oldest of three, in regards to injustice in this country, right? And what it looks like for our students to do everything right and still get the door shut in their face. And that propelled me to want to live a life of service. I eventually ended up getting my green card and finishing my bachelor's degree. And I joined Teach for America, and that actually brought me to San Antonio. So I actually moved to San Antonio in 2012 to teach for SISD in the east side of our city as a fifth grade bilingual teacher. And that just opened my doors to a whole other set of inequities that students that look like me, families that look like my parents, experience every day in schools. So I became a champion for families from my time in the classroom, and ended up eventually leaving the classroom to do community organizing work, advocacy work for the last 11 plus years, both in the public ISD space, the public charter school space, and also nonprofit work as well. So I kind of have a plethora of those spaces. I was really excited to found Futuro, which we are all about ensuring that families and students are at the center of change in education for our city. We are a city that only 37% of our kids from third grade to eighth grade are on grade level when it comes to math and reading. We think that those numbers should be a heck of a lot higher. We think we have the potential. I fell in love with the city. This is why I even chose to even come back after my graduate degree, where I'm raising my daughter. I want our levels of schools, of programs that we have in our city to make sure that our kids are prepared for college, career, and beyond, and that they can actually fulfill the promise of prosperity the same way that I did as an immigrant coming to this country because of those educational choices. And I think our families, no matter their background, deserve quality and deserve those opportunities in this country.
So how does Futuro work with school districts?
Yes. So we work with families from all across our city. So we actually engage families sometimes at schools, our back-to-school fairs, in nonprofit events, right? And we actually have a community organizing program in which we bring families and we teach them about how does power work in our city? Who makes decisions around education? What does that look like? And we also teach them a community organizing framework that pushes them to connect with other families in our city, bring the stories, the issues that they hear, and we actually begin to craft things that they care about. Our families, last spring, they named that they were really excited to support ensuring that kids have access to high-quality educational options, that teachers felt supported, that our students felt supported in regards to mental health. So we think it's critical that they are also part of the solution and the conversation. And that means also training them on how to speak to electeds, how to speak to power in a way that they feel heard and understood. So we're so proud. We actually took our families already to city council, to commissioner's court. We actually invited both mayoral candidate and city council candidates to come speak to our families, so that way they would hear from them how they would like San Antonio to be a thriving city for their students and overall families.
So you're active with families in which school district? Most active. I mean, we have 16 school districts in Bexar County. You can't hit them all, I'm sure. So which one?
We have about
where are you most active?
We have about 60 parent leaders as part of our effort. We have parents from SASD, Edgewood. We have families from like public charter schools. Families that choose to send their kids to like in-district Innovation 1882 schools. So a little bit of like a north side as well. South San as well too. So kind of all over. And we usually try to meet in like central locations, so that way our families that are driving from across town can get there. We also do some virtual meetings. But I think going back to your previous question, not only we have this community organizing cohort, we have a program to increase voter registration and voter turnout. We know that particularly in municipal elections, what about 1 out of every San Antonian, out of 7 San Antonians really decides on who is going to be our next mayor or next city council member. We would love for community participation to be much stronger. And we have recently, last fall, launched a program called Future Leaders Academy, in which we're hoping to train community leaders who may want to run for office. So that way they feel like they have the skills and capacity to do so, and particularly who want to champion public education and improvements in our public education.
Now, I mean, a lot of what you're describing sounds like COPS Metro, which is, a very long-standing community activist group with, they organize through parishes. They have citizen leaders. Were they one of your models, or, where did you look for examples of what you wanted to do?
Yeah. So for me, I think a lot of my background, given the last 11, almost 12 years in the community organizing work, I cut my teeth in organizing, like one says, in the Pacific Interfaith Community Organizing Model, which actually borrows a lot from the COPS Metro structure. I have also gotten a chance to study at the Harvard Graduate School of Education and connected with, and took class and was a teaching fellow for Marshall Gantz out of the Harvard Kennedy School. So really, kind of infuse a model that is rooted on building up power in community and ensuring that, again, like we're teaching people how to access the power they already have and how to, organize people, right? Because oftentimes when we're all trying to go after a million different things, then we accomplish nothing. And I think that, to what you were naming at the beginning of the podcast, we're in times that require a lot of decisions around what do we focus on when it feels like everything's on fire.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Everything's on fire and the money's only going to get more scarce.
Absolutely.
So can you give me an example of, you said, ensuring high quality educational programs is top of mind for parents, right? Yeah. Give me an example of a group of parents you've worked with to accomplish that.
Yeah, so we've been looking at data. I just mentioned to you that about 37% of 3rd through 8th grade students are on grade reading level. And, again, we're a young organization. A place where we thought we could start last fall was actually beginning to talk to city council around where we're at. I think a lot of what we see in our city, we're a city that within San Antonio itself, we have 17 ISDs.
Right.
On top of that, we have charter schools, right? And I think our families are oftentimes, they may have one school in an ISD, one kid in an ISD, one kid at a charter school. They're not thinking systems, but they're thinking, what works for their family, what works for their students. And we wanted to infuse a little bit of that thinking in council, right, to be able to share both the data, but also open up a conversation around what could be possible from the city council seat and from the mayoral seat around, supporting schools, right? So like we see a world in which, our city could be much more involved, right? Like, of course, as a city, we have pre-K 4SA, we have ready to work,
right.
Nothing in K-12. right? So we, if we think about it, we really haven't had an education mayor since, Julian Castro, possibly.
Right? Yeah. I mean, he's the one who ushered in pre-K for us.
Yeah. So, and I think it's a choice, right? It's a choice not to want to do that, right? And what we think we're missing is bold and courageous leaders who are willing to step into that space, right? And I think particularly given the times that we're facing, the dismantling of the Department of Education, we're seeing billions of dollars being held hostage in Austin. And that means struggle for schools, right? So I think whether we look at, for example, a challenge like chronic absenteeism, where we're like one of the worst cities in the entire state of Texas, only about 25% of our kids are chronically absent. They're not showing up to school, which means they're not learning. We do public safety campaigns. We spend millions of dollars in safety, in infrastructure, in health campaign. Why not spend them in education? Why not think about the purview of the city in programs like community centers, libraries, funding to nonprofits, and ensuring that we're wrapping around kids and families and schools in the way that it's going to be supportive, but also in a way that it's going to, bring up the question of like accountability. Are we meeting the mark or not as a city? Do we have a bold and courageous vision as a city? And are we making progress to get there and to also prepare the workforce in our city to make sure that we're attracting industry, that we're growing as a city, and that we're not in a situation where we have to outsource talent, right? And we're leaving people behind, or leaving San Antonians behind because we did not preemptively focus on ensuring that, our children are college and career ready.
Right. So you recently had a forum for City Council District 6 candidates. First of all, how'd that go? And second of all, is this something you plan to do around the city? Like, all 10.
We will love that. We will love that. We are a young nonprofit. I think that also requires making some decisions around like where capacity lies. We had decided to do a candidate forum. This was our very first one. We've been very outward facing with our program for about a year. And our parent leaders have been working for about a year to learn about the community organizing model, begin to meet with electeds, begin to craft, what they wanted to do. So we were so proud to hold like this, first and that I've seen so far in this season, parent-led candidate forum. They came up with the questions, they invited the candidates, they ran the whole program. So it was like parents at the forefront. And we had over 250 attendees. We had all 8 candidates participate, which we were super proud of. And, we thought it went great because it allowed for a conversation that was rooted on, the needs of families to be brought up to different council members. However, like for us as an organization, I would say we're going to be focusing a little bit more on District 6 and on District 8. And the reason why District 6 serves the highest amount of public school students in our city. I mean, as you know, a lot of our families are leaving the inner core of the city to move out. District 6 is one of those districts that is
District 6. It's kind of a west side district, northwest side, kind of right in there,
and growing district, right? Because so many families are moving there. So we thought that was interesting, and we're also we have a 501c4 which allows us to make endorsements. We are hoping to make an endorsement for District 6 and also District 8. We're not sure about toying around potentially doing some type of event in District 8. We would love that. But we also were thinking about District 8 because it's a district that has high academic achievement, a lot of innovative models and public choices in that district. And, it would be really neat to have, ideally a champion of education for that district that then could talk to different council members around how do we replicate what's happening? How do we make sure all kids are thriving in our city?
Yeah. Now, any thought of making a mayoral endorsement? Maybe not this cycle, but going forward.
Potentially next one. Yeah. I mean, I think for this cycle, we're choosing not to make an endorsement. However, we're speaking to mayoral candidates a lot. We already had a mayoral candidate come to speak to, our parents came up with the questions, and then they ran the whole meeting. We're having a couple other candidates come to our parent meeting in the next couple of weeks. I've also been engaging with candidates as well to also kind of elevate, conversations that we're having with families. We want a mayoral. Ideally, mayors come and go. We know that that's the name of the game. We hope that community remains constant and vigilant, and is pushing those leaders to be accountable. And we want a champion. We want somebody at the bully pulpit that is willing to be bold and courageous around what children need in our city. That are willing to make education a priority, and also make education a priority from a place of collaboration and inclusivity. I think for the longest time, there's been a little bit of this rift between like traditional ISDs and public charter schools. Like we want to actually help to, think about like any type of policy should be in collaboration. When you look at a district like District 6, right? You have 1 out of every 5 students is a public charter school student. Right. So it means that if as a city we're doing any type of policy, whether it's like on digital divide or mental health or any type of funding that we're trying to put towards education, and we're only allocating that to ISDs, we're leaving a lot of students out of that. Right. And they're also taxpayers, and they deserve to be paid attention to. So we really care about education as a priority, and also like inclusion and collaboration, which I think merits like what our families want. And what we discovered, we actually did this poll. It's on our website if anybody wants to look at it, in which we asked San Antonians last fall how they felt about education. And some of the things that we discovered was that 83% of San Antonians are supportive of public school options. And those numbers were even higher amongst Hispanic and Black families. So I think we gotta be listening to how families shop around for schools, and what, like, they know their children best, and they're looking ultimately for options that are going to be beneficial for their kids. And when you look at data, we have some of our schools in our city that only 6% of kids are on grade level when it comes to math. 8% of kids are on grade level when it comes to reading. And, if I'm a family in that school, I also deserve to make a different choice. And we want leaders that understand that and that are supportive of policies that are inclusive of all public school systems.
So, I mean, the City Hall's reach into public education is kind of, historically, it's been kind of limited. I mean, it used to be that, the city would increase its funding for the San Antonio Educational Partnership, and that to them was participation in public education. Julian Castro came along and really pushed pre-K for SA, and this was seen as kind of a really innovative moment for San Antonio for governance. As you talk with family, are you developing some kind of agenda you would like, that you'll propose to city council, to mayoral candidates? Stuff like a laundry list of things you'd like to.
Yeah. We're working right now on honing in on our top priorities, but I can share with you some of the things that are bubbling up. I mean, of course, we want to do a little bit more narrowing, right? But some of the things that are bubbling up for us is like, how do we make sure that we have a city that is supportive of program in regards to either chronic absenteeism, or whether it might be literacy or math excellence, right? And ensuring that our kids are proficient. I think a city that is doing this in Texas, we're looking at is Fort Worth, right? Like a few years back, they decided to make third grade reading a key goal for the city, because they wanted the city to make sure to rally around that goal. And what they did, they infused in, their library, after school programming, community centers, literacy specific curriculum. They also even, convened to discuss, are we making progress or not, right? And then they even brought back retirees to come read to children into schools, and kind of they did a pay program to do that, right, for retirees. That is a great way to kind of wrap around kids. I don't think it necessarily needs to look exactly like that, right? But thinking outside the box is what we're hoping to see, and whether that might be on chronic absenteeism or reading or math, which I think there's a lot of work we need to do as a city. I also think, like, for us, we're looking into how do we also support making San Antonio becoming like a teaching destination? We heard a lot from our families that they were concerned on three things, and this matched to what we discovered in the polling. High quality academics was one, school safety was the other one, and teacher excellence was the third one. And when I speak to superintendents, to educators, everyone's hurting in regards to finding high quality, high caliber, eager teachers. I think, the pandemic has done a number on education in regards to people leaving the
in a lot of
profession.
ways, right? Yeah.
And families see that. Like, families tell us, like, my kid had 3 long-term substitutes last year, and that was a mess. Or, my kid's teacher a month in left, right? So I think families feel it from the classroom when we are not supporting our educators. So we want to be supportive of that. And we think that is workforce. That is also a purview of council and the mayor, right? To think about how do we attract, teachers as a workforce and potentially make San Antonio a teaching destination. And then we're, of course, always concerned. I mean, this came up in our polling that we did and from our families, safety, school safety. I think it remains a critical concern, not only in regards to, school shootings. We also hear about like ICE raids and like other aspects that make our families feel unsafe in schools. Right. And then the other aspect that could be associated with school safety is mental health, right? Our families are still seeing that that's a challenge. It's also difficult to access, like, and wanting more support in school buildings to make sure that students and families have access to mental health providers.
Right. And we're living in an age where a lot of those problems you just mentioned are going to get worse. Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, like you mentioned ICE. So Edgewood ISD, and these were numbers from several weeks ago. They had 200 students that just kind of dropped off the rolls because of because of fear of ICE raids. In your dealings with families, how much are ICE raids playing into that problem of absenteeism? I mean, are you talking with families who are saying, yeah, we keep hearing that ICE is going to show up at our school, so we keep our kids at home?
Some, yes. I think we deal with some of our families, maybe mixed status families. Some of our families are not. So I think on and off, right? I think we also hear from what other families are telling them, right? So like the word that's going around in the community. And there's a lot of fears. I think when we talk about kids showing up in school and being safe, that is one of the things that could happen and that could hold families back from sending their children to school. Like, for example, we have this mom that they have a mixed status family and they actually went through a deportation. Like her husband was deported. Yeah. So now they're having to deal with this new dynamic of having husband in Central America, children half and half. And it's just devastating to families. And these are not families who are, doing anything criminal, right? So it's just tough. It's tough, like, to be a parent in this age. And I think particularly when we're seeing, different, they're not unfounded rumors. They're rumors with a reason. I mean, we were looking at examples even from other states. Tennessee just proposed charging undocumented students tuition for attending, K-12 education. Of course, that's unconstitutional and illegal, right? In regards to what the Supreme Court has said, in terms of the rights of undocumented students. And I think it's also, we're very concerned around what's happening with the Department of Education, right? Because like they used to be, and hopefully will continue to be, the entity that will stand in between around those, like, claims around equity, right? To make sure that the students...
Let's kind of focus on that first.
Yeah.
So I think... for a lot of people, the Federal Department of Education is an abstraction. They don't really know what it does. Say by year's end, it's gone. And it's like, that's a overly yeah. Who knows really what the timeline is? We don't know at this point. But say it goes away. What's the effect on San Antonio schools? What's the practical effect?
I mean, when we think about schools, particularly like across the nation, about 8 or 9% of schools' budget come from federal dollars. And I think the way that we see a most direct impact is if you schools that are Title I, particularly that serve a high amount of low socioeconomically disadvantaged students, are going to take a hit. I think we are, some people describe San Antonio as one of the largest poorest cities. We're going to take a hit as a city, right?
It's 17% poverty rate. Yeah, right? Probably.
Yeah.
Probably, maybe.
And programs like free and reduced lunch, programs are already going away around providing free and reduced lunch during summer programming for kiddos, which is, something that we're very concerned about because a lot of families rely on breakfast and lunch to feed their kids every day in a very heavy way. We're also concerned around what it'll mean for special education students. We have some avid, strong special education advocates in our group who actually came into education advocacy because of injustices they had seen in regards to their kids getting services and whatnot. So that's an issue that personally parents are coming to me telling me, I'm concerned. I'm concerned around what this will mean in terms of my child getting the services that they need. Also, when it comes to access to higher education, I mean, we're working to improve K-12, and I'm curious what it'll mean for students, particularly low-income students, disadvantaged students, in regards to accessing a higher ed program. And for us, we're also concerned about the accountability component too, from like data, like the Department of Education would do every year the national report card, in which they do this like randomized test across the U.S. and you can compare like how is Texas doing versus California. Like let's narrow down into San Antonio, how are fourth graders doing? So we can measure progress and how our students are doing. So there's a lot that we rely on, and then don't even get me started on the research to make sure that like kids are learning how to read and do math in the most effective, up-to-date ways to do that. So we're very concerned around what it'll mean for families in regards to those equal right protections and then programs that are critical for particularly low-income families in our country.
Are families themselves concerned? Like, is it registered with them that, hey, this department could go away and it's going to mean something for my school?
Yeah, I think that the families that we hear the most about are special education kids that have families that have children in the special education program, because they know that the funding is coming directly from there. And I do think that, we do hear, particularly from the families on like free and reduced lunch program, and some concerns around some of that going away, because I think that those programs are like maybe the most known in the K-12 space, that they're coming from federal funding. But there's a lot under that also is coming from the Department of Education that people may not know about. So I do think it's also our job and our role to make sure that families are, aware around what this could mean. Think about how we can influence like electeds in making sure that this doesn't happen, because ultimately it is a decision of Congress, right? But though, who knows, right? And then that we
Congress has been pretty open-handed with the Trump administration in what he can do. So
who knows? But we want to do what we can from here, and also this brings an opportunity to think about what is the role of local leadership, right? Amidst this chaos, are we just gonna sit in the sidelines, or are we gonna do something about it? Right. Are we going to try to find some ways to wrap around schools and children that need our support and that need leadership the most? And I think we're starting to see some examples of that. The other day, my own councilwoman, Aldrete Gavito, she proposed a plan with other council members on supporting teachers, right? Like looking at the workforce piece. So I think that there's already hopefully a little bit of energy and momentum in the air. We hope it continues, because it's a very critical moment that we're living.
Right.
And I think it's also going to be on us whether we do something about it or not.
Right. Yeah. And you've also, apart from what's happening at the federal level, obviously you've got a voucher bill going through Austin right now. Odds are there will be a school voucher program with education savings accounts for kids. Parents want to send their kids to private school. Some homeschooling expenses would be covered by this account. And, they're talking about $1 billion program. That's money that's coming out of the public school kitty. So what do you think this is speculative, but what's the immediate impact of taking that much money out of the system? What's that going to have locally, do you think?
Yeah, we'll see. The short answer, right? I think in other states, I was speaking to other education leaders across the country in a conference a little while ago, and in other states, the highest moment and the highest peaks of ESA was the day it passed, and then it kind of dwindled, right? In terms of not enough students accessing it or not meaning much for different education markets across the state. But who knows, right? Who knows what it will mean? I think for us, we're an organization. We believe very strongly in family agency. We believe that families know their children best. They should be choosing the program that aligns best to their kids' needs. However, we do not think it should come at the expense of public schools. We are a public school organization. We want to champion policies that support public schools across our city. And we want to make sure we can champion for dollars and funding to make sure that those schools can continue to do great work and can even thrive at an even higher level. And we're also the mindset of it also can mean if our schools are providing what families need, both on the ISD side, on the public charter school side, or on the 1882 innovation school side, we have a lot of public school options. So, our families, if they're getting what they need, they may not even want to venture to, receive access to those ESAs to do any type of other programming. And so I think it's also on the public sector to deliver, given the situation that we're in, and to make sure that we do the best we can to make sure that we keep those families and we retain them, because there's also a world in which it passes and it doesn't mean that much.
Right.
Hopefully.
Now, have you talked with parents with children in schools that are either failing or not doing particularly well, who are interested? They kind of like the idea, in principle, of a voucher program.
I have spoken to both kind of groups. So I'm hearing both sides from the community. I think some of them that are approaching it with a sense of curiosity of could this mean me accessing a different type of education for my child and receiving money for it? And then other families that are very much I'm going to protect my public school and I want to make sure that, we're not taking dollars away from public schools. So I think we're hearing a little bit of everything out in the community. However, us as an organization, we are here to ensure that at the local, municipal level, that we're championing policies for public schools.
Yeah.
We're very much focused on that as an org.
Do you work with a lot of teachers?
Some teachers, that's a program that down the line we'd love to expand and bring in more to our org, but we're focused first on families and students.
Okay. Yeah. Now, tell me how, this is going to be a really consequential year for public education, I think. Yeah, I think that's it's only March and we're already talking about a voucher program and the dissolution of a Department of Education. How is that going to change your organization, Futuro San Antonio? What does that mean down the line for you?
I think for us, we want to, like I said, our role is to make sure that we're championing policies, that we're bringing leadership from our community to the table to make sure that public schools have what they need. So that means that, of course, if this program has a hurtful side effect, we want to make sure that schools are, supported in some capacity, right? We are not in the business of protecting private schools. That's not what we do. However, because we believe strongly in family agencies, we don't think it's our place to shame families if that is the choice they want to go with, right? I think we gotta respect that. However, all the work that we do with our community organizing cohort, with our programs, are all focused at improving, local policy at the local level so that our public schools have what they need.
No. How is your organization funded?
Yeah, so we're very proud to receive funding from 4 local foundations, local nonprofits. We are a nonprofit, so we do not receive any tax dollars or federal dollars. I mean, maybe that's a good thing.
That's right. In this day and age, yeah.
Right. With all the strings of badge and all of that going away. In addition to that, it's also my job to attract national dollars to our work as well. So I also been able to secure a couple of foundations that are national to give funding to our
What are the
work
local
as well.
foundations?
So, for instance, Bloomberg is helpful in terms of providing us some funds, and like we're very excited about that. But at the same time, we're super proud of having local support as well. So we think it takes both to make that happen, and we're hoping to see, more, hopefully, like more financial sustainability for our work, so we can impact more families in our city, and we're able to do more candidate forums. We're able to engage more in community. We're able to participate in different, whether it might be a school board or like.
Yeah, so I mean, we've talked about city council races. How about school board races?
I mean, it's not out of the question for this municipal race. And given how new we are, we decided to kind of put more of our effort and energy on a couple of city council seats. That doesn't mean that maybe next time around I don't know. Yeah. Who knows? We could focus on school board too, right? It's not out of the question, but it's more of a question of capacity for us at this point. Yeah.
So, last question. Like I told you before we got started, I wanted to end on something positive. So let's look ahead 2-3 years. Where's your organization? Then what are you doing?
Yeah, well, I am hoping we could be a grassroots powerhouse. We really want to make sure that we have hundreds of families, of youth, maybe even teachers, who are part of this movement. Hopefully, we're in a place in which we're seeing bold and strong city leadership doing what's right for kids, maybe leadership even at the city, maybe even the county, that we're seeing more innovation happening from more school districts, that we're closing the gaps, that we're pushing for policies that are community responsive and rooted from a place of equity and doing what's right for most underserved children in our city. And that we're making strides, right? Maybe it might not be perfect. We might be on our way, but we're seeing numbers trend up instead of down, because we actually have been seeing numbers trend down for our kiddos for the last 3 years. So we're hoping that as a result of what we're bringing to the table, we can actually be part of a solution, part of ensuring that we have a better and stronger San Antonio, and the families have been strong contributors to that ecosystem in our city.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Daiana Lambrecht. I really appreciate you coming by, and thank you. If you have not signed up for our ENside Politics newsletter, drop down to the show notes, click the link, and sign up. Thank you very much. We'll see you later.